ready to kick off. As I said, first and foremost, a little bit of housekeeping just to let everybody know this will be recorded, so we will be able to share this out afterwards. There is a chat panel down below, so if you do have any questions, you can pop your questions in there, and we'll get to them. We have a Q&A session at the end, so we'll be able to address any questions just in case we don't cover it off during the session itself. And by default, all cameras are off and on mute as well, just to allow us to focus on the session itself. So again, as I said, welcome to the session. We're going to be covering off budgeting and planning within Sage Intacct this morning. Hopefully this will give you a little bit more functionality or insight into functionality within the software. If you have joined the sessions before, this will be an enhancement on that. If not, we will hopefully cover off an overview of the software in itself as well. So just by way of introductions, my name is Ivan Darmody. I look after the sales side of things when it comes to Sage Intacct here in Envisage, the island of Ireland even. I'm also joined by Chris and Kyle here. So maybe if I hand over to Chris, you might want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. And welcome to the session. So yeah, my name is Chris Hawley. I'm a director here at Envisage, and I look after the GB territories. So I primarily look after our customers in England, Scotland, and Wales. Over to you, Kyle.
Kyle, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, certainly. Yes, I'm Kyle. I'm a senior consultant at Envisage. I've worked with Sage products over the last 25 years, and I've worked with many different types of companies, ranging from non-for-profit charities, service-based, product-based companies, and project-driven service companies as well. So I'll be hosting the demo here later on. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So I suppose just to cover off the agenda of what we'll be getting through, first and foremost, I'll just give you a little bit of background. Some of you may be familiar with ourselves, some not so much. So just to give you a little bit of background as to who we are as a company. Then we will cover off a high level overview of Intacct itself, a little bit of the history and basically what it's about. So again, I'm conscious some people might have been on some of our sessions previously and might have an idea, some people won't. So hopefully it can serve as either a reminder or an introduction into the system itself. That's it. Here's I'm going to take us through the software, covering off specifically the functionality around budgeting and planning. And again, then I think Chris will be taking care of the Q&A at the end of the session as well. So as we said, who are Envisage? Who are we? So we are part of the Knowledge Group. We are a software house based in Dublin. We do also have offices in Belfast and Newcastle in the northeast of England even. We are an award-winning Sage partner. Over 22 years in Ireland now, we've been working with Sage, and we've won awards many, many times over the years for that as well. One thing about us is that we are slightly different to some other partners and even some other software companies in so much that all we do is specialize in Sage ERP software. So within the Sage ecosystem, we specialize in both Sage 200 and Sage Intacct. So obviously this morning, this is going to be focusing on Intacct, but we like to focus in on our speciality, and in the world of Envisage, that speciality is Sage ERP software. The staff we're probably close to about 40 employees within the organization. All our support staff are based here on the island of Ireland as well. One thing I've noticed in myself, before joining Envisage, I was working in Sage Ireland for about 16 years. A lot of the staff that you would be encountering, both from an implementation point of view and also from the support side of things, are all ex-Sage staff. So in terms of the knowledge, it is all firsthand. Most ex-Sage staff who are working with Envisage probably have about at least a decade of experience firsthand. So you're in good hands once you decide to join us on the journey for your new ERP solution. So just a little bit about Intacct, again, conscious of those who may not be familiar with it. Sage Intacct itself was actually originally developed back in 1999. And one thing that sets it apart from, again, and not a lot of other applications, it was actually originally written first line, as they say, first line of code was written in the cloud. So back in 1999, that was quite a feat. I think they obviously had a lot of foresight as to where they wanted to be. Not a lot of companies were really thinking about putting financial and accounting software in the cloud at the time. So that in itself was kind of a direction that they wanted to go in. So over the period of time in the States, when it was established, they developed quite a lot of associations and a lot of partnerships as they grew. Even so back as far as 2005, so almost 20 years ago, they developed a native integration with the likes of Salesforce. So again, integrations, open APIs, very important to them. So they saw the benefit and able to work with other companies. And that has carried through to today. So Sage always had I suppose, a hole in their portfolio where they wanted to have a truly cloud native ERP solution. And as Sage do best, they went out to market to see what is the best that's out there. Bottom line, where can we go to acquire the best in breed cloud native ERP solution? And that's where Sage came across Intacct. So after a bit of negotiations, they ended up spending somewhere in the region of about $1 billion, 800 million, I think it was, to acquire Intacct back in 2017. So a lot of insight went into it, a lot of thought, and since 2017, they have basically been redeveloping the software, making it more appropriate to both the UK, Irish, and European markets. And as of 2023, software was actually launched in the Irish market. And here in Envisage, we were the first Irish partner to actually sign up, become fully accredited, and take Intacct under our wing. So while yes, it is quite new to the Sage ecosystem and Sage's portfolio, it is by no means a new application in itself. So as I said, it is best in class cloud platform. It really harnesses the ability to use AI and machine learning. And the software is intended for companies who are looking to improve and drive efficiencies. So if you have processes that you find are quite manual, quite laborious, quite time consuming, Intacct really enhances the process that you have by implementing AI and machine learning just to automate a lot of those processes. I think one of the key terms I heard one of the heads of Sage using is that AI is there to enhance the human effort. So it's not about replacing people, it's about enhancing what they're doing, and I suppose just speeding up that process to allow people to be more focused on important business or important elements of the business. The application itself, as we'll see in a second, is quite scalable. It is modular based, so the software can actually grow with you. It is a platform that's designed to add modules as the company grows. So it's not a case of one size fits all. It is quite, it's flexible in terms of its deployment. So we can really work with you to see what is the best solution, what are the modules that will work with you, and then even down the line, phases 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years in the future, what else could actually work for you as well. So we can kind of plan all that out, make sure that ultimately the system can grow with you. So as you can see, we have the core platform in the center, and around that you have all of the various different modules and attributes that we can add on to that to make it more specific for you. There are specific wraps that we can put on for the likes of software companies, financial services, not-for-profits particularly, very, very strong in, professional services, hospitality. And on top of that, then you have specific modules in terms of accounts payable, accounts receivable. Obviously, there's a lot of talk around AI at the moment, so you have a lot of AP automation, AR automation, even PO automation is buzzwords that people are talking about. So these are all functionalities that can be added on either day one or as the business grows. But again, all of this is intended to improve processes, enhance your workflows that are already within the business, and just ultimately make it a lot more fluid for the company so you can focus on more important business. One question people do come up with when moving to the cloud for the first time is security, is about, I suppose, peace of mind. As you can see, Sage have a 99.8% uptime commitment. So a lot of the time people moving over from legacy systems find that bandwidth is a problem. They're crashing, you're staring at a spinning little wheel in the middle of your screen. You're almost guaranteed to have consistent uptime. And the important thing is, as being cloud native, if you do need extra capacity within your instance, that can be added on as well. If you need more users, need more bandwidth, that can be added on. Probably the biggest peace of mind for CFOs, for CEOs, is the redundancy element of it. So your data is always secure, it's backed up, and even the backups are backed up off another site. So far, the data is actually hosted within Dublin. It is on the AWS platform, though it is held within the EU as well. So on that, as much as I can talk about it, it's probably best to hand over to Kyle, and he can bring us through the software itself and show us it in action. Kyle.
Okay, thank you very much, Ivan. I'm just going to share my screen now. So give me 2 seconds to do that. And hopefully everyone can see that screen now. So today, what I'm going to be doing is showing you some of the many benefits your company can get by implementing Sage Intacct in your business. So in this session, we're going to be focusing, as has already been said, on budgeting and planning features in the Sage Intacct product. I would like to show you some of the things like eliminating manual spreadsheet errors with a cloud-based solution, collaborating seamlessly across the departments for more accurate and flexible budgeting, looking at creating and comparing multiple what-if scenarios to help you guide in your decision-making within your company, and gaining insight, generating budgets directly from Sage Intacct, and achieving better financial agility. So forgive me if you've already been on previous webinars, but I think it's vital for new attendees to give them a brief overview of the main functions of the Intacct system to help us understand some of the key features of the product and how that works together with the budget information we're going to be looking at. So whether you're a CFO, whether you're a department head, whether you're a somebody that looks after the accounts receivable or accounts payable, then Sage Intacct can help you. If you notice the screen that I'm on, first of all, is what's called its inventory, their dashboards, role-based, and I'm just going into the financial controller dashboard. So this dashboard is basically bringing information from different parts of the system in relation to my role in the system as a financial controller. So I'm getting things like my expenses, my revenue, my customers, what cash is on hand. I'm also bringing into this dashboard things like close-through summaries, working checklists for month ends, reports that I have on my dashboard here, and cash balance trends, etc. So I'm putting together information from the different parts of the system to give me a headline dashboard view of my Sage Intacct system and my company information. So along the top, just to explain a few of these functions, I've got these things called performance cards. And a performance card basically brings the information and presents you with the top headline view. And in this case, if we look at the cash on hand, we can see that it's comparing it to the prior month. And we've got a green flag here to say all is good, we're up on the prior month. Now, as well as having these performance cards, we can take a look at that and say, okay, well, why is the cash on hand up? What sort of things are being posted? And we can actually drill into the information, go into my bank account, and we have a list of my transactions that are going through the bank account. And in fact, I can drill down even further than that and actually look at the batch information of what's actually being posted, where, when, and how. So we can see here that from the headline information on the performance card, we can drill into the detail behind that. And that's obviously very important when we're wanting to look at figures. We can also very easily change these. So if you've been allowed access to do so, I can just go on, click the wee cog, and up comes my system. I can set up here that let's not do it for the period. Let's look at it as in conjunction in comparison with the budget. And you can see with a wee red flag to warn us that our budget is either over or under, if a green flag, etc. So it's very easy to change, just clicking in, changing there, changing back, so you have control over what you're seeing in the budget. There are certain reports that you can actually just add as you're running the reports to your own dashboard on the system. Just to draw your attention to this one, this is hours billed. So this is what's called a statistical performance card. We can have statistical journals in Sage Intacct, and this one is for the hours billed. So what we're doing here is we're seeing, if we drill down, not debits and credits in the system, but we're seeing increases and decreases. So for instance, my billable hours here for my service department, for my location one company, I have an increase of 80 hours billed here, plus the 8, giving us the 88 hours on the system. So that's very handy when you're running reports on the system. We can use that for doing things like, well, what is my hours billed? What is my revenue? So therefore we can see the average revenue billed per hour on the system to give us some additional information that will help us in our business. So we can look at our statistical journals. So it's worth remembering that this dashboard is being pulled together as we speak. So it's being done at the time of looking at it. We're not running a BI query overnight. We're not updating some cubes every hour or anything like that. We're seeing information as we click down and drill down into it. As we refresh the information, we're seeing it live on the system. Now, it's worthwhile just at this point talking to you a wee bit about how the general ledger and how the Intacct system uses a thing called dimensions. If I look just at a quick slide here for you, we see that the general ledger is in the middle. So your general ledger or nominal ledger accounts, everything flows to that no matter what transaction you're putting into the system. And round the core of the general ledger accounts, we have a thing called dimensions, as Sage Intacct terms them. So a customer could be a dimension, a supplier, an employee, a warehouse. And then on the other side, when we look at our organizational dimensions, we can look at things like locations, departments, classes. They could be different service lines you have on the system, different product lines. We can look at contracts and projects if you have them enabled. But we have also the ability to have user-defined dimensions on the system, so we can basically future-proof the system. Now, where do they key in? Well, they key into our general ledger, as we've seen. If I was just to jump to another company and drill down into the profit and loss report, look at the transactions that we have for the sales ledger, you can see that in the general ledger posting, we have our dimensions, our location, our departments, our classes, our customers, all tagged against a nominal account. Now, that means that we can use these when we're talking about reporting. We can use them when we're accessing information, and we'll see how they're used in budgets later on. But if I was simply wanting in this particular profit and loss report to use that dimension, well, again, very easily done. I can just edit the report. Excuse me, I can just edit the report. I can then look at my columns, and very quickly on my actual column, I can go down and look at my dimension structure, and I can expand that dimension structure, in this case by locations, and set that. And what I'll do is I will set that on the system, and I can preview that if I want to in the live report. Okay. So we have the ability to do that within the system. So edit, change our column, select our column there to expand by, and any one of our dimensions we can do that, but I'm using locations, set it, and save and done. And if we look at our report and refresh that, we now have our different locations being pulled into our report. So that's very handy whenever we're looking at dimensions. It also means that we can keep our nominal structure to the one level, a very flat level. So we'll have our list of nominal codes for our balance sheet or P&L. We don't have to include multiple nominal codes for the combinations of cost centers, locations, etc., etc. So we just have a flat nominal structure, which is easier to work with on the system. Now, you see me jumping into location one company. We do have with Sage Intacct the ability to have obviously more than one entity, more than one company as such. And these companies can be set up and can be used just by simply clicking on the company, and it will open a new tab for us to go through from the top level. Now, why do we have a top level on Sage Intacct? Well, just to show you the company structure that I have. So I'm just going to consolidation and look at the organizational view. I run a software company. I have many locations and also different currencies. We have different tax jurisdictions, and we can allow the Intacct system to allow us to deal with all of those. And in fact, we can have a hierarchical structure for our locations as well. So that's now a wee bit about your company structure. The other thing that it's good to point out is that we can have what's called shared entity information. So in our system, we have one general ledger, which is shared across all of the entities on the system. You can also share suppliers, you can share customers, you can share stock information, things like that, which means it's very easy to get up and running. And also then if you learn the processes in one company, that can be transferred to other companies as well. So that's worth knowing. It's a shared entity. You can, if you want, lock down suppliers for one entity or another, or have them available for all. Okay, so that's a wee bit about our entities and our dimensions. Now we're starting to get into getting information from the system. So as well as a dashboard, we have an array of reports that we can do. We have a report center. What I'm going to do is just focus on a financial reports on the system. So the financial reports, you can see we have balance sheet, cash balances, profit and losses. We actually have a quick start library. And the quick start library itself allows us to pick pre-built reports and use them on the system. Just to show us the reports and what they look like, if I go down and we'll use a profit and loss with a dimension, so we'll use a department report. And you can see that going across, we have the owner. We also have report types and audience types. Now, this is helpful to us to know where to find the reports, but also to, for instance, there's board reports, and we may have a board report or a pack that we need to send to the board. Well, that's okay. We can do that with Sage Intacct. Now, if we just look, first of all, at running the reports, you'll notice that there's a variety of ways we can run that. We can process it and store it for later. We can run it to the screen, which is what I'm going to do now. And because it's run to the screen, it's HTML. There is our dimensions, which is our departments. We can also drill into the revenue subscriptions, revenue services, and we can also drill into the information behind the figures, right the way down to our transactions again, which we saw from the dashboard. So that's our report, creating a report, but also it can be done via CSV, PDF, Excel. And it's worth bringing your attention just to this one, which is a schedule. So if I wanted to schedule this report, I can filter it by departments, locations, etc. I can schedule it to happen on a particular date and when it ends. I can also schedule its recurrence. So I might want this, for instance, to go out as a board pack, a report every month or every week or every day, whatever I want. One of the nice ones is following our general ledger close down. So you'll know as part of the board pack, we need to close our nominal ledger down. We need to finalize our figures. So this report can be set to go out after the close of the general ledger, and we can email it or store it in the cloud, etc. So that's, again, another advanced function of the reporting within the system. We also have other reports that we can do. We can get very intricate with reports. This one is a project report, and it's from our inner reports, and it's our interactive visual explorer. So that means that we can go down and we can look at, for instance, different storyboards along the bottom here. We can look at information being generated from our criteria. So if I didn't want a particular project status involved, I can select the statuses, select the locations, and as I select the locations, the information changes on the report. And again, that can be brought through right into gross margin allowance, billable hours, because this is a project report that we're looking at. So again, a lot of information that we can have. One of the key things when we're talking about any sort of planning, when we're talking about any sort of system, is it's key to be able to see the information that you require when you need it, and it is up to date in the system. So there's front and center of your financial information. Okay, so okay, let's have a wee quick look at some of the other things that we have on the system relating to that. You'll notice that some of the reports include budget figures. So we're going to be looking at how you get budget information in there. But just at this moment in time, we can realize that the budget is held against the nominal ledger, but budgets can also be held against, for instance, if I run the project reports here, there's a budget v actual, and I can run that as well. So if we OK there, we can see that we've got our labor costs, our other expenses, and our total costs, looking at budgets and budget variations as well. So not only budgets can be held against nominal structures, but they can also be held against things like projects as well. But let's actually see the budget information and where we add the budgets. So the first thing is we can go to our section for budgets, and we have this thing called the budget repository. If I look in the budget repository, you can see that there is lots of types of budgets in here. So the first issue that we can address straight away is that many systems only have a single budget associated with their general ledger. This means that we have to take that budget out, and if we want to analyze that by department, by location, etc., we have to maybe do some calculations and create our own manual spreadsheets. Well, in this system, in Intacct, we don't have to do that. We can do it all within the product itself. So, example, if we were to start off, I'm sure most of you are working on your budgets for the new year already. So what we can do is we can create a proposed budget on the system, and that is our proposed budget for next year. We can use that proposed budget to start budgeting our different nominal accounts, etc., or different dimensions, which we'll see. But also that proposed budget then may change in the new year to an operating budget. So there's changes being made. And what I want to do is I want to see, well, what is my proposed budget? What is my operating budget? And how are they differing during the year? Well, that's easy to do with Sage Intacct. And we'll show you that in a second when we come to a report. I also can do things like forecast budgets. So again, I'm looking at my budgets. I've got my operational budget, but there are changes being made. So I can forecast the budget in there and I can analyze that particular information. So all I'm doing there is I can edit them, duplicate them, and then refresh the figures. If I take a wee look at my operational budget and just go into the budget details, you can see in here that we have our different locations. I'm just going to go to location 1 there and just show you an example of this 4100 general ledger code. So it's for revenue and software services. And you'll notice straight away that we have a budget against not only the general ledger code, but we are budgeting against the department and we are budgeting against the location. All right, so that's what that. So if I go into the budgets, I can actually see all of the different periods and I can look at my budget amounts and I can edit those budget amounts very easily, put in my new budget in here. I can also do things like grow the budgets by a percentage or by amount. And I can base the budgets on employee headcounts or actuals and things like that. So there's quite a lot you can do within your budget information there. Again, if I was to look at my top budget here, sorry, let me just get that location 1 in again. I can see that I'm not only budgeting against department, location, but also against my type of service line, or type of customer line, and I'm budgeting against an actual customer. So if I was to view that, you can see I have service line 1 in here. I have also in here the customer as well that I'm budgeting against. So a lot of information in here on the budgets itself. One of the things that is always key when you're looking at the budgets is how do we get our budgets into the system, or even how do we get our budgets out of the system? So we can do things like we talked about our proposed budget. We can export our proposed budget out into Excel. We can manipulate the figures by adding a percentage or whatever else we want to do. And then it's very easy to import the budgets back into the system. I'll just show you, just so you know, if I was to select that file, choose the file here, and we'll just open it to see what it looks like. So very simple. We've got our budget information, we've got our general ledger codes, any of the other dimensions that we want, we have our values in here, and we can even import a budget note for that particular combination of GL and departments. Okay, so I hope that gives you a bit of a breakdown on how easy it is to get the budget into the system. So let's look at how that's maybe used within the system. So again, if we go back to our reports here and go back to our financial reports, we have one set up here just for us. So there's budgets versus actuals on our profit and loss. So again, I'm just going to run that in the system. And what we should be able to see here is we've got a revenue, which we can drill down into the figures, but we now have a proposed budget and we have an operating budget as well. And then we have a difference between the actual and the operating budget in the system. So it's really easy to see what we're doing there. It's very easy to change these budgets. If I wanted to look at a different budget against my operating budget or even my forecast budget, then it's just a case of going back to the report, and I can either duplicate that report and set it up again with different criteria, or as we've seen earlier on, go into the columns and just choose a different budget that we would want to see. Okay, there's our forecast budget in the system, and just rerun that report. So working with the figures after they're imported is very easy to do, very easy to see within the budget reports, etc. So we can look at that. Now, when we talk about budgeting information, I wonder how many of us look at our budgets at the end of the month, and it's only there that we see that we have budget overruns. So budget overruns, obviously, we're trying to stop that. We're trying to look at the budgets at a more periodic basis. But one of the ways Sage Intacct addresses this issue is with a function called Spend Insight. And Spend Insight can be set up to show the impact of general ledger journals, AP invoices, purchase orders. So all the things that sort of would affect your costs and your budgets and costings. So if I was to take a quick look at how Intacct does that, I have set up a payroll journal here. So we're going to give our employees a bonus. So I have a quick journal in the system for a bonus. I have the location, so it's against the location, department, and it's against a nominal code. I also have a budget against those nominal codes. And I'm wanting to put 14,000 in there for that particular transactions for giving bonuses out. Now, I have also now a show spend insight. So if I click the show spend insight, what is happening is it's showing us the budget against those combinations of codes, dimensions. It's showing us what we actually have in here. It's showing us then this purchase and then the funds available. So sorry, folks, we're not going to be able to give out budgets. We're not going to have bonuses. We're over our budget in this case. So that's a way that we can see while we're entering our transaction, the spend insight, how that's going to affect us and how it's going to affect our budgets. Now, if, for instance, you weren't the person putting the journal on, looking at the spend insight, the Intacct system has an approval process as well. So if the transaction was put on, a journal was put on, it goes to someone to approve it. The approver can also look at the spend insight and either approve and reject when we want to go on. And that's your nominal journal. If we look at our purchase orders, again, purchase orders are one of the main overspends that we see staff creating big orders for stock, buying new expensive equipment, things like that. So what we have here is an example of a purchase order going into the system. We are looking for professional services. We're looking for £10,000 worth of professional services, €10,000 or USD in this case. And again, we have a show spend insight management. So I can go and see this combination has a budget. This is the actual against it at the moment. This is what we're committing. Therefore, we do have funds available to create this purchase order on the system. So hopefully that will help us as we're working with the system and not just reactively running reports for our budgets. Okay, so additional functionality. One of the main factors with a business, just keep a business healthy, is obviously keeping an eye on the money flowing in and out of the company and taking into things accounts like money owed and everything else. So also decisions that are being made around that can be done, and we can use advanced features in Sage Intacct planning to support things like scenario-based modeling and what-if analysis and things like that. So this module, again, cloud-based, it's helped us with inbuilt budget templates. We're creating unlimited scenarios using the data and dimensions that we already have set up, and also helping us collaborate with our team as well. So if I just go into the Intacct planning, what I have is of a particular budget set up here. If I look at the imports in the budget model, so we're now starting to get using the information in the system. And what I have done is I have East Coast sales, and I have standard products and premium products on my list. And what I want to do is I want to set up a model for that particular budget and general ledger codes for these particular products here. And I have the two best-selling products on my system. What I want to ask the question is, what if I change the price of my product? How much extra revenue is that going to give me? Is it going to affect my costings? What else is happening at the same time? So if you notice here that up along the top here, I have a value against my product 1 and 2. So what I can do is change that product, and I'm going to now sell it for 650. Now, as soon as I click that, what happens is that the model down below changes. So our 650, and I'll change it back to 600. Do you see that again? Information is changing as we're processing this information. So we're asking, if I changed my product from 600 to 650, well, how would that affect my model in my budgets? Now, okay, if I just look at this very briefly, how do I know, why is it multiplying, or why is it adding on along the path here of the months? Well, what I can do is I can go in and look at the units, and I can say, well, what I'm expecting from the system is that we have a growth month on month of 5%. Okay, so that's where the quantity is being 5% each month added on. And then what I can do is I can go into my model and say, well, what does that mean for the sales? And it basically means that I can set a formula, and I can say, yes, take the list price, which is my 650, times the number of units sold in the month, and that's where I'm getting my information to build up my total sales. So we are able to put figures in, we're able to produce calculations, we're able to do growth on growth, we're able to take that from lots of different places in the system. So that was my standard product sales. Again, when we're looking at scenarios, I can add scenarios, add different models on the system. I can even add them from a model library that we have. So there's, like, for instance, travel expenses, expenses by dimensions and apartments, which will already be pre-built with a lot of those calculations in the system. Now, if I just look at my main information here, I can also share information on the system. Now, I've said that I'm working as a financial controller. I was looking at the financial controller dashboard earlier on in Intacct, so I mightn't be the right person to work out what my 5% month-on-month sales is going to be. I really need the sales director to give me those figures or have input into the budget. So what I can do is I can share that information, I can share it with the sales director, and I can also then allow him to be able to do different things within the system. Is he only allowed to see it, view it? No, we want him to modify it as well and give his opinion in that. So rather than having a board meeting, rather than having call everybody in, trying to work over the figures, I can hand that off to someone who knows what they're doing, who will be able to contribute to the budget, and then we can sort of take a look at where we're going within the system. So we've got our model, we've got our main here. We've also then looked at our scenarios. So I have a thing called a list price increase, which is what we've just done, and have best case and worst case scenarios. It can also be used for things like, what is my travel expenses going to be for conferences that needed over the next year? What is my head count? What happens if I bring a new salesperson on? How much is that going to affect the business, etc. So where does that all come into play? Well, if I look at my sheets here, I can see that I've got my working budget. Okay, so there's my sales, there's my East Coast sales, there's my standard products. And again, I can just drop down now and look at the scenario that we've been doing, and I want a list price increase. I'm looking at the increase only. No, I want to see the increase via the budget. So I can start to see how that's going to affect them. We have also got a cost of sales is going to be down as well. So we need to watch that out, and we've got our differences when we are looking at our scenario based via our working budgets. Again, I can run it on a monthly, quarterly, yearly, look at different dimensions, which are all coming from the Sage Intacct locations as well. And we've got our balance sheet, head counts, our model, even our cash scenarios there, what's going to happen with the cash received, etc. So we've got all of that information that we can build models, what if scenarios, and have better visibility of what we think will happen when we change things in the system. So finishing off as well, we also have a nice dashboard showing us things like revenue, cash balances, operating expenses, etc. So going right through to budget headlines, etc. within the Intacct. Okay, so hopefully you can see that that is now being able to bring your budgets and manipulate them a bit further for those what if scenarios. Just going back to the Sage Intacct dashboards here, I showed you a financial controller dashboard. There's an AP manager dashboard. So we can see, sorry, let's go into the accounts receivable. And we're talking about our cash here and our money. So we've got our accounts receivable. So this is information being pulled for somebody looking after the accounts receivable information. Just going to finish off with a couple of other standout features within the Intacct system. One of which is what's called GL outlier. So when we're talking about budgets, when we're talking about planning, we're talking about accuracy of information as well. So it's important that the information put into the system is accurate against the budgets, against the general ledgers, etc., etc. So the way Sage Intacct can help in this is through machine learning or through AI. The system has what's called a GL outlier, and every posting that is made, if this is turned on with the system, is analyzed. So all of your transaction history is being analyzed, and the system is looking for things that don't match the usual pattern of transactions. So if we look at this journal, this particular nominal journal has been declined. Now, it wasn't declined by a user that was approving the journal, it was declined by the system. So if I go in and view that journal, you can see that I can go in here and I can go in and see that unusual historical matches were found. So please review them. So it's found 2 nominal codes here, and it's figured out that I don't usually post the combination of this location, this service line, this project, and this account. So it's stopping and saying, are you sure you want to post this? And I can either edit and change it, or if I submit it again, it's saying to the system, no, we're happy with this transaction, learn this transaction, and don't ask me the next time, because it is a valid post. All right, so the GL outlier, again, is one of the many benefits that you can do through machine learning within the Sage Intacct system. The other couple of things that we have here are things like smart events and smart rules. So it is possible to tailor your system. You don't have to be a programmer to do that. We can go in here and, for instance, we've set up one here that if there's a new account created, then we're going to be able to email the people on the accounts team just to say there's a new account being created in the system. And they're very easy to set up on the system. I also have another one, which is a smart link, which is set up for my customers. So if I do my accounts receivable, look at my customers, go in and edit my customer or view my customer even, sorry. What we have is we have a smart link to open them up in, for instance, Google Maps. Okay, so there's many different ways which Sage Intacct can help your business around the budgeting, but also around some of the structure of the system and being able to get information in and out of the system as well. So hopefully that's given you a good overview of the Intacct and also how we can use budgets in Intacct. I see there's a few questions coming in, so we'll give time to answer a few of those questions and I'll hand it back to Chris and Ivan. Thank you for listening.
Yay. Kyle, fantastic as always. Thank you very much. So just before we move over to questions and answers, we have quite a few. What I want to do is just take a moment just to go do a quick summary of some of the things we've seen. So if we can just pull up this slide. Fantastic, thank you very much. So obviously we've presented a lot of information in a very short period of time. And obviously, you know, to give you some impact. So we're only really scratching the surface of what Intacct can actually do from a budgeting perspective, in particular. So there's a lot more we could actually cover. So, and I can see some of the questions that are coming in are asking quite detailed questions. So hopefully we'll get time to answer all of those. So just a quick recap. So what we've seen, obviously, in Kyle's demonstration is how the getting the budgets into Intacct is very, very important. So if we can do that in the most efficient way possible, and Intacct will support you with the budgeting workflows, as well as the automations that are built into the product to speed up that whole process. Whether that is just one person entering the budget, or as Kyle showed, the ability to share that responsibility across multiple departments and department heads, and get that feedback coming into the budgeting process, which is just as equally as important. I'm a big Excel user. I've created some of what I call my works of art in the past, spreadsheets. But I'm also the first to put my hands up and say that I've made some whopping mistakes in my formulas. And as you can imagine, by using the budgeting process within Intacct, it is designed specifically for that purpose. So you're going to reduce the amount of errors that you can get with spreadsheets, because you're reducing the reliance on, as it says, unsecure spreadsheets. And coupled with that, just as important is the ability to be able to analyze the information. So getting that, having your finger on the pulse of that information that's coming in. So as you're posting transactions into the software, to be able to understand exactly what your position is and how you're performing against those budgets, whether it's different types of budget that you put into the system. It's obviously very, very important to be able to react to changes. So by using the dashboards which Kyle showed, you can see that you've actually got real-time access to the information as it's being entered into the system, which means, as I say, you've got your finger on the pulse of what's happening, which means you can also react to any changes in the marketplace, and be one step ahead of your competition as well within that process. A particular element of the product which I like is the collaboration element. So the fact that you can share the budgets out, but also the fact that within the budgeting process, you can actually record history. So as the budget's evolving, Intacct has a collaboration tool, which isn't just available for the budgeting process. It's actually available across the whole of the product, which means you can record the conversations, the decision process, and all the information around that as you're creating that budget line or the budget itself. But also, as I say, this can be against customers, suppliers, journals that you're putting into the system. You can record that history. And that includes things like documents such as Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, or PDFs, which have actually been used to define that budget in particular. And that's particularly useful in 6 months down the line, you're looking at a budget line going, okay, how did we come up with that budget? You've got the full documentation supporting that process, and in a conversation history as well. And the final point, just before we move over to the questions, so obviously these multiple scenarios, so what we call the what ifs. So Kyle showed an example of best case and worst case type scenarios that you can put into the system to model. But as anybody who's run a business knows, that there is quite often a myriad of different versions on that. So it can be best case, it can be worst case, or it could be bang in the middle, or it could be a mixture of all of those. So by using those what-if scenarios and being able to model, you can start to predict how that would impact your business. So for example, if you've got an opportunity coming down the line, you may need to resource up. So everybody knows that getting new resources into a business is quite a lengthy process. But if you can understand when you need to do that and the impact that's going to have on your business, you can start to plan ahead for that. But also that includes things like, for example, if there's some risk that you need to mitigate, you can start to look at that and say, where can I reduce those costs? Or my supply chain, how is it going to impact on my purchasing and my supplier contracts? All of that comes into play when you start using those what-if scenarios and being able to effectively, I hate the term, but get ahead of the curve within the product itself, so you can understand, what's going to happen to your business should those situations occur. Okay, I think what we'll do now is we'll jump over to the questions. Let me just double check and see how many we've got. Let me start off. Okay, so we've got a question here. So to say, what are we saying? So we have a which scalable. How easy would it be to transfer budgets into Sage Intacct? I think that's one for you, Kyle.
Yeah. Okay. So very easy if you have the budgets within Excel in the system. If I just share my screen again, what you can see is, and again, I touched on it a wee bit before, but when we have our budgets in the system, what we can do is in the budget repository, we can open our spreadsheet, we can import and also export out our system, but we can import our file. And again, as is shown, the structure that you will be planning is around the dimensions in the general ledger. So we will start off with a template here, and you can take your figures that you have in your Excel spreadsheet, you can put them into the template with the budgets and the budgets node, and then it's very easy just to take that forward and import that in just from the system. So it's easy to do that. Another question there, just I'll touch on while I have my screen shared there, is we can also, questions come in about, can you budget against statistical accounts? So we talked about statistical accounts, hours or people, etc. in the system. And if I just nip into my operating budget again, and if I just go down to show you, there's an employee head count. So yes, we can budget against our employee headcount. So I have a headcount here of 25 that I want by the end of a particular date. So you can include those budgets for statistical information and then allow them to be put on to different reports. Thank you.
Yeah. The question sitting in here. So can the creation and modification of budgets be restricted?
Yes, so the way Sage Intacct works is that functionality is given to particular users. So you have a matrix of functions that you're allowed to do. So we can exclude people from the complete budget repository, as we saw here, or what we can do is we can restrict them from being able to edit the budgets and things like that. So yes, Intacct throughout all the system, not just the budgets, will have options to allow, disallow, only view, for instance, options, certain options as well. So that can be carried the whole way through the system. That's part of the things that we would use when we're implementing the system. We would talk to them about users and functionality and then permissions for the system, because that's an important part of the system. You only want people to see what they need to, you only people want to do what their job is, and that can all be done as part of the implementation process within the Sage Intacct system. Okay, thank you.
Just a quick one, so over the statistical accounts that I think have been called. So how can they be impacted, or can they be actually used within the formulas within the dashboards against other budget lines? We can use them as part of the calculation.
Yes, they can be used as part of the calculations. Yes. So the example that I gave earlier on was, hours billed and revenue, so you can work out what an average hours billed was, etc. So that should be, you should have the ability to do that. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think that is the end questions. Just asking if I've missed anything, Ivan.
No, I think that actually covered it all off.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's kind of it.
Brilliant. Thank you. Finally, guys, just to say, well, thank you very much for attending the session. We've actually finished slightly ahead of time, which is unusual. But what I would say is, if you do have any other further questions or would like to get in touch, there's our contact details. Just once again, like to say thanks to Kyle and Ivan for being a part of the session. Kyle for his always fantastic demonstrations and bringing the product to life. But obviously, if you've got any follow-up questions, anything at all you'd like to get in touch with us, there's our contact details. We'll be delighted to speak to you. And once again, just to say thank you very much for joining us this morning, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for everybody.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Take care.
Cheers, guys.